And we'll go ahead and let you get started. Show us how to make those pickles.
Okay. Well, we certainly know that pickles are really popular and they're really easy to make. So I'm going to be doing a demo to show you how to make sliced dill pickles, which you can end up putting on sandwiches, on hamburgers. They're really wonderful. That you're going to look for the small pickling cucumbers. That these should be about smaller than 6 inches. And you'll find them pretty much the peak season is now, the beginning of August. And we've got some prepared, which is great, kitchen help. But to start, you're going to cut off the little end, because that end will actually help keep the pickle crisp. And I'm just going to do some slicing here to show you. They're about 1/8 of an inch. So once you get your pickles sliced, you're also going to, I like to set everything up in advance so it's really easy to pull and get ready and I don't get distracted. You're also going to have your lids washed and the rings washed, ready to use. It's also important to take your jars and have them simmering in hot water. And that's to make sure the glass is tempered when it gets the hot pickling liquid poured into it. Sorry. You can also use a slow cooker to keep your jars warm. So that's a really good handy tool as well. Okay. So to start, I'm using equal liquids of water and vinegar. We're going to pour them into a pot here to simmer. We're actually going to bring it to a boil. And you probably also know what makes really good pickles. You have to have pickling spice. Today we've got a bag of pickling spice, which makes it really easy to just put in. I'm a tea drinker, so I also use a tea ball. You can put pickling spice in a tea ball and just put that in the liquid. This is ready to go. I have kitchen elves today, so I'm putting that in. And we're going to bring it to a boil and stir. Once we add the sugar and the salt, and you're going to stir just to dissolve the sugar and salt. Thank you. So this will take a few minutes to bring to a boil. And while that's getting started, what I'm going to be doing is filling the jars. Where's my jar gripper? We have this handy little gadget which it actually helps you take the bubbles out of the jar if you see those. And then you want to leave a 1/2 inch of headspace at the top. And I'll be demonstrating how that works as well. So it's really nifty. Here's our ladle. And what makes dill pickles, of course, is dill. This is really beautiful dill head. And the timing is perfect. You get the cucumbers, you find the dill at the farmer's market or your grocery store. We're also putting garlic in the bottom. We have cloves of garlic. And the other ingredient is mustard seed. So all these flavors are going to mingle together and infuse the pickles. I think we're ready to start with jars. My assistant Barbara is using a really handy jar gripper or lifter, and it just comes right around the top of the jar. Great. So in the bottom of the jar goes a nice fat chunk of garlic. a bay leaf, some mustard seeds, and ball also makes a really good pickling spice, so you may want to look for that as well. Would be what you would put in the mesh bag. And then we're going to start filling the jar with our nice sliced cucumbers. There are a couple, I did learn that there is one kind to look for, and they're called Kirby's. So they're small. When you're looking for cucumbers, make sure they're firm, that you don't want to feel that they're mushy, that they should feel firm and solid. If you're not going to use them right away, keep them in your fridge so they stay cool. And always wash them before you use them. That they've been on the ground, you want to make sure they're clean because you don't want any bacteria in the jar. And I did mention to take off the stem. So we are going to start filling the jar. And you want to fill it fairly densely. The top, we'll fill it to about ½ an inch from the top. And I'll show you how to measure for that. Did I put in my dill? No. You can use a whole head, or if they're really big like this fluffy one, then you can break it. And I sometimes shake the jar to make sure it's down inside. You can put it on both sides as well, and keep filling. How's our liquid doing?
I've magically made it.
All right.
I've moved time forward.
Magic kitchen. We're taking a few shortcuts to show you the whole process. So I'm going to use my measure, and each step is 1/4 inch. So I want ½ an inch. So this is coming up right about where I want it. And let's see. We have a ladle here. And I'm happy to take questions. If you have questions, shout them out. And this is also really handy. It's a funnel, and you notice it has different sizes, and it will help you get the liquid into the jar and not all over the counter. Can everyone see if I hold it up? Because this is the first step. We're filling the jar with the pickles, or with the cucumbers and the dill and the spices. I'm going to fill it to about ½ an inch from the top. And again, I can check. I like to have the liquid covering the top of the pickles because it's now infused with the spices, and that gives the flavor. Okay, I'm going to check again. Just about there. And then I'm looking for bubbles, that you want to get the air out, because that will make sure that the cucumbers marinate properly in the liquid. And you can run this bubble remover right along the side and sort of squeeze in the cucumbers to take out any extra air bubbles. That looks good. This is really well designed. It fits your hands, that it's really comfortable. So all right. And I'm going to talk a bit about lids. You want to wash them in advance, both the lids and the rings. And then you also probably know that the lid is really important to making a seal on the jar. That's what keeps the food from not deteriorating. So you put, oh yeah, thank you. My handy assistant is reminding me, in case you want the rim really clean, so you're going to wipe it off and make sure there's no residue from the pickling liquid. And that also ensures that you have a tight seal. And then you screw the lid on so it's even, it feels nice and tight. And then the next step, we're going to put the jars, when we finish filling the other, we're going to put them in a hot water bath. And you're going to boil them in the hot water bath for 15 minutes. And that will also set everything and make sure that this seal. I think we have a sample jar that's finished, but you probably have heard how to check the top. Can you hear that noise right now? That it sounds like a little pop. But what happens as this simmers in the pot, in the canning pot, in the hot water bath, it's going to shrink that lid and make it solid so it won't have that give. And then there are two ways to check to make sure that that seal has happened correctly, that you can take off the ring, you can feel for the pop, that you can also take off the ring and try, if this piece is stuck tightly, you won't be able to get it to move. So that's another way to make sure that it has sealed properly. Can you hear that? That means it's not sealed. So we have a jar lifter there. This is also handy for putting the jars back in the big canning pot. You see how it fits right around the lid? Much easier than trying to use tongs. I learned the hard way. I have drop jars. And the canning pot comes with this wonderful basket. It's made so that it fits right on the edge, and it's about halfway down in the water. So you can place all your jars in the basket. Now I could have filled this a little more. See the bottom? It's got the liquid there. And then the jar just goes into the basket. Once we fill the other jars, we're going to put them around in the basket, and then these just float down into the pot. That makes it really easy to pick up and to remove. And they'll cook for 15 minutes in this big pot. And then you turn off the heat and you let them sit for 5 minutes and then take them out. And does anybody, can you guess when they're ready to eat? Any pickle pros here? You got Jean? About 4 to 6 weeks. You just want to let them stay in the jar and the flavors will meld and they'll get really flavorful. And you can actually store pickles or any canned goods up to a year, that they will be good. Question?
I watched you put the funnel on the table and you had just a towel to wipe it.
Mm-hmm.
You don't have to keep that sterile, you just have to keep it clean.
It's good to keep it clean. Yeah.
No, but I mean,
Oh, on the table? Yeah, if you can wipe it with hot water.
you don't have to keep it sterile, complete, just clean. They're two different things.
Right.
You're not introducing any bacteria by placing that on it.
Right. I'm working from work surfaces that I can make as clean as possible. So I haven't.
I just want to prevent botulism.
Oh, okay.
I want to know in the home, what am I going to do?
Okay. I'm going to ask our expert, because she'll probably have better information, but it's a good question.
You know, the big thing is botulism, so everybody's so sterile,
Yeah.
Okay, we'll take it when Laura gets
Okay.
back. She's in the front.
Okay. We'll answer that question because it's a good one. Yeah, I know, it's a concern. Because the process is really easy. I mean, it's as easy as boiling water, but then you do have to pay attention to each step. So you want measure? Yeah. We've got another jar ready. Yep. And the jar lifter, shall I get them? Nice.
And Judith, we just had a question from the audience, just about the jars and the size. Those are a pint jar?
These are the pint jars, yes. Yeah. So we're going to trade jars here. Great.
There's some to taste.
Okay. Yep. Keep going. We can do more than one jar, can't we?
Do these pickles stay crisp?
Did the pickles stay crisp?
Yes, that's the whole idea.
Okay.
Yeah. I think that's the magic of a good pickle maker. You know, I had a family friend who made the best dill pickles, so I was always really shy about doing it. I knew I couldn't compete with her, but then a couple years ago I got brave and I started making pickled beans. And it was like, oh, this is easy, and it worked. Because you're starting with crisp cucumbers that get good quality cucumbers, and then the whole process, they're not overcooked, they don't get mushy. And I think removing the stem from the cucumber, that's another added insurance, because there are enzymes in that little stem that will soften the cucumber. Nice. I'm gonna. Yeah. Where did?
So Judith, we had another question from live stream, and you were talking about starting pickling beans and just getting started with pickling in general. So do you recommend doing this with a friend? You've got Barbara up there with you.
Yes, definitely have a friend. It helps to have a second pair of hands, and it helps to have someone remind you that what you might have forgotten. That it's just a lot more fun. And usually there's plenty to share. Do you want to check for that, Bubbles?
You bet I do.
Just like now.
And can you tell us why you're checking for bubbles?
The bubbles, the air will have bacteria, so you want to make sure that it's out of the jar.
This one's a little overfull. But I guess we'll just be.
Does this one have dill?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Another question we had was about headspace and how much you all are
For the pickles,
leaving.
we're leaving about 1/2 inch. We're also trying to push them down as much as possible. This is good. Barbara's a pro.
Get in there.
And if you get to the point where you see that, oh, maybe I don't have enough cucumbers in, you can add more. And press, and this, again, you can press down with this to squeeze them in.
I have a question.
Yes.
So that's the basic recipe. Would you ever add like any other ingredients to add like some other flavors?
That's a wonderful question, and the answer is yes. I have added red pepper just for color. It's really fun at Christmas time. You can see the jars with red and green in them, and that's fun. You can also add more garlic if you really like garlicky pickles. That's easy to do. I'll let you finish that one.
Okay.
And sometimes I've added the big balls of allspice. You know, it's not cracked, but they're the big round, they're a bit rounder. Once in a while, I know somebody who added a clove, a whole clove, which gives it a really interesting flavor too. So you can certainly personalize it. I think every cook has their own dill pickle recipe. So it's kind of your signature dish. What else should we tell them?
Maybe we should let them taste.
Good. That's a great idea. Would you like to taste pickles? That we have some magic elves in the back, so we have pickles ready to taste. Thank you.
Can we do like stacker pickles this way? Like,
say it again. Can
like
we?
Stackers for sandwiches? Could you do the sliced pickles the long way instead of the short way? Just
you
the same?
certainly could. Yeah, you could. And I think traditionally, dill pickles can be sliced the long way. So you do it the same way. You trim. You'd wash. And then slice it sideways. So you have the, sorry about that, you have the long slices, and those will also fit really nicely in the pint jars. You could do whole cucumbers too, yeah. Yeah. Yes. Yeah, I'd probably leave them a little longer, but Lauren, we had a question that.
She's touching the table when they're funnel. People sit down. Is that okay or no?
You know what I actually do, and this is just a tip of my own, is that I actually put the funnel in the jar, a mixture jar on the side, so it actually collects the juices and everything too. So that's a great tip. You want to make sure you always start with everything washed and rinsed very well. Wash it in hot, soapy water before you get started. But through the canning process, you're going to be doing the sterilization. So you want to just make sure that it is clean to start, but it's going to be sterilizing during that process.
It's okay just to use a clean towel. Right.
Yeah,
You have to have like
exactly. If you just think about everyday cooking, you always want to start with everything clean, everything washed, same as that, but you are going to be sterilizing during the canning process.
Okay, I've been told that like when you can, you should only use like all recipes because they've been tested so much.
Yes.
And one lady said don't change it by putting different spices in and things.
Yes, that's what.
She's saying you can.
And she's probably referring to recipes that have that addition. So there's so many pickle recipes out there. You can add red pepper if the recipe calls for it.
She was saying is don't use like cookbook canning recipes. They haven't been tested enough for the right balance of acidity and makes good vegetables.
Right, we always.
You can change your recipes a little by putting in different pickles, more pickles or less, or putting in red peppers or.
No, we do always recommend to start with a tested recipe. So what she, I think, was referring to is another recipe that has been a tested one from us. Yeah. So you can always add, like dry spices is always fine to add those because they don't change the acidity. They do. We recommend always using whole spices. And for pickles, you can use the whole spices because you're just going to take out the pickle and it will fall to the bottom. So it adds a great flavor, but it won't get in the way. But you have a great point. Use the whole spices versus the powder, or it does get a little cloudy.
Is that?
When you start canning, it's too late. You must go on.
That.
Actually, my mother has everything before she became a nurse. And she says, I really, and we never
Jar lifter.
There. Yeah. Yeah. So we've got our 5 jars in the canning kettle now. They're in the basket. That give you a peek here. And all you do is close the handles in and lower it. And what's also important to make sure the process happens correctly, you want to have at least 2 inches of hot water that you're going to bring to a boil over the tops of the jars. That just ensures that they're being cooked thoroughly. And these lids are great. You can see how it's boiling by looking right inside. So I turned up the heat a little bit to bring it to a boil. It's going to boil for 15 minutes. And I'll keep watch on it. And then I'll turn the heat off and let it sit in the hot water for 5 minutes. And then we'll take them out and let them cool down naturally. And Lauren, do the lids seal in the water or after?
It's a common myth that a lot of people think the sealing happens in the canner, but it actually happens once you bring it out of the canner after the processing time as it's cooling. So as it cools, it contracts and it pulls that seal. So it actually happens after it comes out of the canner.
Great. So here we have our magic kitchen at work again. Here are some finished jars of pickles. And you'll see that the lid, you can't push at all. It's solid across the top. That's one way to check. You can also take off the ring, and you can't lift the disc either, so you know it's sealed tightly. And these look, I don't know when they were made, but they look really pretty. Any other questions?
Yeah, I have a question.
Yes.
So once you open a can of the pickles, right, and then you would put them in there, you say 4 to 6 weeks, and you put them in the refrigerator, how long can they last there?
In the fridge?
Yeah.
I would say 2 weeks.
Okay, great.
Hopefully you'll eat them faster.
Sooner than that,
yes.
yeah.
They're really good.
Thank you.
And we have another question, too, that came in through the live stream. One viewer was wondering what you think is a good recommendation for a first-time canning recipe.
For pickles?
I think just in general, but if you have a great pickle recipe that you can recommend, maybe this one or another, that would be great as well.
I think this one it's on the Ball website, the freshpreserving.com website, and I think it's really easy because the spices are already mixed. You don't have to fuss with that. You just put them in the brining liquid. So that saves a thinking step, a processing step. You're actually ready to go. And it's probably easier than you think, which is another reason to have a friend. You can reassure each other and say, hey, this is working. We've done the right steps. So great. All right. How are the pickles? Yeah? Good. Yay.
Are there other questions?
Any other questions? Good. I think having the right tools, making sure everything is clean, having good fresh ingredients, that also helps. If you can within 24 hours after you buy the produce, you'll be assured that the quality is going to maintain. That's a great question. She just asked if you don't have the flower heads of the dill, can you substitute something else? And yes, you can. You can use dried dill, about a half a teaspoon of dried dill, or you can use dill seed, and use that instead. The leaves don't have as much flavor. It's actually the flower heads that you want to use. That's a great question. Anyone else? That. Okay, happy pickle making. That. Yay.